Hey everybody, it's Cassidy Civet, your favorite Civet YouTuber, here with another Civet Chat. Anthrocon recently updated their Fursuit Parade rules to officially ban skin in any capacity. So what does this ultimately mean for the Fursuit Parade, now that so many people are excluded? Well, it's worth mentioning that Anthrocon was the biggest convention in the world pretty much up until this last year, and is the first American convention to have a cap on attendance. After last year, they had over 17,000 people. So it's safe to say that the Fursuit Parade, which is apparently already like a whole city block that gets involved, because like, you know, the famous thing with Anthrocon is that they take over all of downtown Pittsburgh, right? So it's already massive in scale. What can you do as the convention organizer to, shall we say, trim it a bit? I guess this is the part of the video where I say, ultimately, I kind of agree with what Anthrocon did. Now hear me out. I saw people commenting about this silly aspect online, but I thought it was funny because it's like, it's a fursuit parade. To me, if you're gonna start like banning things from the Fursuit Parade because you really want to focus on the fursuit part of the Fursuit Parade, that's what it's called. Well, I would personally say the first thing would be, you know, anything that's not a fursuit, though it's not like people really march in the parades wearing not fursuits or costumes of some kind, so I guess I sort of mean like, you know, it's not like there's not like kink stuff in the parade is what I'm saying, but if they were gonna cut stuff, that might be like the first stuff to get cut, you know, like inflatable suits or like latex suits or whatever. Not that they show up all that often, but you know. Then the second thing I say you would cut is the cosplays, because those are not usually fursuits, and I don't know if this is a part of the Anthrocon policy actually, but personally, you know, if you were an event, maybe you would have and I would understand having a concern over, say, copywritten characters. You know, Nintendo is known to be pretty slap happy with their cease and desist, so I don't know if I would want a barrage of Pokesuiters in the Fursuit Parade and risk some sort of, like, litigation. And then the third and final step I think you could reasonably take to trim the Fursuit Parade from, you know, people that are willing to get dressed up and walk outside in the July heat in, you know, downtown Pittsburgh where it gets pretty hot, is, I guess, the partial fursuiters. But they didn't ban partial fursuiters. That's something that a lot of people were saying, but it's not actually correct. And I myself may have repeated it a time or two, and that's why I'm mentioning it here. Because it's not partial fursuiters that are banned. It says that as long as you're covered up, you know, no skin, wearing some sort of outfit that complements the character, then you're allowed entry. I honestly think that this language is really interesting, like keeping true to the spirit of the character. That's not something you hear a lot anymore in the furry fandom. Like, that's a really, like, I don't want to offend anybody, god, you know, I'm such an expert at that, but like, the spirit of the character is such a, like, a 2000s, maybe like 90s even, kind of mentality of suiting. And it's not that it's a bad thing. There is absolutely a divide and a distinction of furries that still believe and practice the act of fursuiting as though it's like mascotting at a theme park. And I know a lot of furries that worked as mascots. At least here in Vancouver, that's a thing that happens a lot. Or Canada more broadly, I think. Sports teams and the like, you know? So I actually feel relatively comfortable in saying that those sorts of people, you know, who are still active in the furry community and are now, say, in their 40s or maybe 50s or older, and they're the ones running the events, guys. Especially Anthrocon. You know, someone made a joke to me where they're like, you know, the burn furs, which is that whole, like, movement to keep the fandom safe for work and PC and all that from, like, the 90s. That's, like, there's, like, a whole thing. You can watch a really terrible Misha B. Barkin video about it if you want, but I wouldn't recommend that. You know, they're like, well, where do they go? And someone said to me, well, they got on staff at Anthrocon. Honestly, if they're calling it a fursuit parade and they introduce these rules for this explicit purpose, you know, I kind of get it. Though the first hurdle they instituted this year was the fact that you actually have to get like a verification to be in the parade. You have to go to a room earlier, at an earlier date, check in or something, and see if they approve your suit, costume, whatever. So that's new. And maybe that on its own would have been enough to satisfy the trimming that Anthrocon needed. Maybe they should have just tried that for a year, I think. But what they did do was the extreme approach, and honestly, my biggest issue with it was that they revealed it a little too late. If this was the first year they were gonna have a cap on registration, and they have already sold out, by the way, because the con is in like a week? When do I post this? And after all, like every hotel in Pittsburgh are sold out. For them to now put this rule in, that's where my problem was. But thankfully, they made very clear that refunds were available. So I guess good sarcastic clap. And these parade rules, of course, mean that I, right now, in this attire, would not be welcome in the Anthrocon Fursuit Parade. But I've yet to go to Anthrocon. I've yet to make my Pittsburgh debut, as it were. I've submitted twice to have panels. I think it was 2022 and 2023, and both times they rejected me. And one year I ended up losing like $500 on a flight. So I don't know if I really want to go until I know that I'm good to go. But, you know, I'm famous online for my disagreements with the conventions in our community, professionally, you know, the majority of the time. And whenever I have a problem with a convention and I try desperately to get people to care about it on the internet, I'm usually told very coldly and rudely that if you don't like it, don't go, because it's not for you and we don't want you here. Some of that was a little additional, but you get my point. And I'm kind of just surprised that no one has been telling these louder Anthrocon attendees that are really, really upset by their, you know, chance to walk out in the blazing July sun taken away. Because that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, sorry if I don't have the most sympathy there, but I also, you know, I might be dressed like this right now, but it's because this is a YouTube video with a bit more of a commentary thing. I am not ascribing to the full mascot mentality when I'm in suit. God knows I talk and sing in suit when I'm in con space. But I'm not really talking during a parade. You know, if I was like on a float and like singing in fursuit, that'd be one thing. But if I'm just like walking down a street, maybe I'm holding a speaker or
you're on
like
video
attached to me and I'm dancing, I'm not using my voice. So I always full suit when I go to a fursuit parade. I make it a point, actually, of going to the fursuit parade when they're at a con, because they're kind of rare nowadays. They used to be a lot more common, and I think that their decline kind of coincides with this exponential growth the community has been seeing lately. Where did all these people come from? I don't know. I mean, obviously the interest in anthropomorphic stuff has long existed before, you know, the internet, and humans are just like social creatures. But when they put a rule in like this at Anthrocon to ban skin, there are sorts of people that have been trying to politicize and weaponize this in all manner of ludicrous ways. Like, here's one example. You know, one of the internet's favorite punching bags, Lumen City, has been really trying to treat this as though it's an ableist and classist issue, and saying that they don't want to be forced to have heat stroke. But you understand that you are not forced to go to the event. You're not forced to give them your money. You're not forced to go to the advance sign up for the parade and get your costume approved. Like, that is what freedom is. The freedom is the, you know, ability to not do something. That's called, you know, individual choice. And it's just, I don't understand if I'm just in like some incredible realm of political thinking, but like, you know, someone that actively campaigns on like the left, like Lumen and I do, how is there such a fundamental misunderstanding of the core definition of what freedom means, or at least how it's interpreted by private enterprise? Sure, Anthrocon is a nonprofit, but you understand the same thing, right? It's a convention, it's their rules, you paid admission to go in there, and now you're gonna bitch about it? I don't know, it just kind of feels silly to me. And to further that point, I mentioned there's a petition about this, right? There is a petition right now on like change.org or whatever that has 766 signatures. I'm not one of them. One of my favorite things about this petition is the paragraph on the like why this petition exists. And they say that Anthrocon's core vision is diversity and inclusion. Again, I'm really trying not to further my haters' constant assumption that I am some sort of like beacon for the far right, some dog whistle in civet form, but that's what they wrote. And gee, does Anthrocon have a mission statement. It seems like an easy thing to check, actually. So I checked it, and that it literally says that it was created solely for the purpose of making a space for people that enjoy anthropomorphics from near and far. That's what it says. I didn't read it verbatim, but it was on screen. I didn't see anything about diversity and inclusion. I think that Uncle Kage, after 20 some odd years of doing this, knows the kinds of people that he wants at Anthrocon and representing Anthrocon in these extremely public-facing events, like a Fursuit Parade on the streets of I almost said Streets of Philadelphia, which is a Bruce Springsteen song, but the streets of Pittsburgh. I was in Pennsylvania. That's close enough. I actually have been to Furrydelphia twice, and I've been to the city of Philly, and it's pretty cool. Nice bell. You should remember what that means again. Anyway, so yeah, I'd love to know what you think. Ultimately, you know, at this point, it's too late. They are not going to change their mind. Not that they were ever going to. No amount of pressure from Lumen City and any other person complaining online is going to be enough to persuade the, you know, really, I don't want to say curmudgeonly, but like experienced, hardwired furries in their, you know, in their 40s and 50s that are at the top of the Anthrocon, like, leadership board. That's not going to be compelling. And even large figures in the fursuit community, like Strobes, posting one time online, what's wrong with it? Though I can't find the post now. It was deleted, but I saw it the day that this dropped. They just responded to like one person asking what's the problem with it. So it's clear that the people like Strobes, or like me, who understand the kind of like full fursuiting performance aspect of what it means to be a furry in like a convention or public space. I mean, I guess that speaks to the older mentality of sorts, or like just a different way of approaching the fandom, because there's some people, you know, like the newer folks who, it's not that like, well, I know that, you know, getting a fursuit, there's a huge cost to that, right? But there's some people who just kind of say like, yeah, I'm a furry, and it's just kind of it. No gatekeeping, bad civet. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Again, I've never been to Anthrocon, so I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other. I've met Uncle Kage before, though. I think we had a conversation. I knew who he is, and I don't know if he knew who I was, but I'd like to imagine I'm on his radar somewhat. I remember there was a time I got a notification on Twitter, back when I had it on my phone, that said Uncle Kage had followed me, and then I checked and he had unfollowed me, but I was still following him, so it wasn't a soft block. It was a slip of the finger, I guess. Special thanks to my patrons whose names have been scrolling on screen. Thank you for supporting the Scandalous Civet and all of her big-mouthed adventures. You know, we just want to talk about this stuff in the community, you know? That's what we're here to do. Because if we don't talk about it, then what is democracy? I guess. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Mwah! See you in the next Civet Chat. Rawr, rawr. What the hell was that?